Yeah, my name is Jonas. So excited to be here. And of course, I'm thrilled that you're actually hosting a product crunch on the topic of flow because it's just my topic. I will tell you a little bit of my background, and then I tell you why watching a Netflix series, binge watching, is not being in the flow state. But yeah, today on the way here, actually, I was reflecting on why I'm so obsessed with this topic of flow states. And I remembered an experience back in high school where during my final exam, the oral exam in history, I had a complete blackout, total anti-flow. Yeah, I studied, I learned, I was prepared, but I just couldn't, I did not function on the spot. So I took a detour. I mean, in that moment, I didn't reflect that it would actually impact the journey of my life. So I took a detour, finished my A-level, then went on to study innovation management and entrepreneurship. And then after the studies, actually during studies, I already started working for a professor here at Moritzplatz at the Design Academy. It's the Institute for Ludology, which is applied game science. And what I was supposed to do is develop a management system, a concept that is based on games, like the motivational psychology behind games. One of the biggest topics there is the flow state, because I don't know, other gamers among us in the audience? Just a few, but if you have a really good computer game, or even also board games, it happens quite a lot that we find those flow states. And it's actually, seems like an elusive concept that just happens like that, but there's a science behind that is very multidisciplinary. It's going to be approached from many different areas that try to explain why flow states happen and how we can get more of it. And this is what I'm trying to show you today. A little bit of the science of being in flow. I want to start by doing a flow check with all of you. So I'm going to ask you a number of questions. All you have to do is reflect on the answer. Answer the questions for yourselves. When you are working, how often does it occur that you are completely focused on the task at hand? How often does it occur that you have a feeling of total control over what you are doing? That you feel competent enough to meet the high demands of the situation? That you're not worrying about what others think? That you're doing things spontaneously and automatically without having to think? That you have a strong sense of clarity of what you want to do, and that you know how well you're doing during the performance? That you have the sense, and this is mostly the point where people realize, well, I've been in the flow state before, when I ask, well, you have a sense that just time passes in a way that is non-ordinary. So time flies by or goes very slow, but there's some sort of distortion during that type of activity. How often does it occur during your work, that you feel the experience itself being extremely rewarded without any external reward or benefit? So what I wanted you to think of is the situation where you've been in flow, of course. And those are the major components. So when was the last time you were really in flow? This time where you were in complete control and deep focus, but it felt fun and effortless at the same time. This is a sweet spot. So the reason why we're talking about this is because it feels very nice, but at the same time, studies show that this is also the sweet spot of performance and productivity. There's a huge McKinsey study that with executives that has shown that when we're in this flow state, we're talking about microflow, really moments where you're completely absorbed in an activity, you're up to 5 times more productive. And here it says 2 to 6 times more creative. But there's an argument against that as well, because flow is a very focused, goal-directed state. But it's been measured in this study. And your cognitive capabilities are such that you learn up to 5 times faster. So those are really broad statistics here. But what is really just as important is that people that experience more flow in their lives, they also have higher motivational drive and life satisfaction. So this has all been measured in the studies that are the science behind the flow state. And of course, when you hear that, like there's this state of mind where you perform your best and you feel your best. I think all of us want to know, how can I get more, right? How can I get more flow into my everyday life? And this is exactly what the science tries to answer. So we're going to look at the science behind flow states. In the scientific research that has been pioneered by the man whose name cannot be pronounced. Who of you has heard the Mihai Csikszentmihalyi, the guy, you know him? And he started the whole research, but for the first couple of years, what he was looking at is describing the flow experience. So there are two components to this. First of all is, in an environment, how can it be structured that flow states are more likely to occur? And the most important thing, which I'm also going to dive a little bit deeper into, is that your skill level has to match the difficulty of the challenge that you're engaged in, the skill-challenge ratio. Then you must have an activity where you know exactly what the goals are, what you're doing and where you're heading towards. And at the same time, you need to get, lots of feedback that is very clear and immediate. Now, they went on to describe in many, in the research, how the flow state is perceived when people are in flow. And this is basically the flow check I just did with you, right? The action and awareness merging, so I feel like I'm part of actually the activity that I'm doing. I have deep concentration, sense of control, loss of self-consciousness, transformation of time, and the autotelic experience. So an experience that is rewarding in and of itself. Here is the core of everything that has been researched from then on. It's the flow channel. Like I said, flow is very likely to happen when you are not overwhelmed because the challenge that you're doing is so much harder than your skill level and you feel stress or frustration. But at the same time, you're not just watching Netflix and you're underwhelmed and you're not actually actively engaging in something but passive consumption. You are relaxed, feel calm, but at the same time, boredom or apathy may arise. The sweet spot, the flow channel, is right in the middle, where you balance your skill and your challenge. And one important thing that I already touched on a little bit is that it's not enough to have in some area, this is the extension of the initial model, you have a matching skill and challenge, but it needs to be a high challenge. And then you need to be able to match the skill to a high challenge. So we're thinking about it in terms of stress, and it's actually interesting that this flow state that feels so relaxing requires some sort of stress. So you see here in the upper right corner, you have a high challenge and a high skill level, only then flow does occur. If you have a matching skill and challenge base ratio, for example, in this area, it's just quite easy and you also have the right skill to do that. For example, watching television, you just feel relaxed. So there must be some stress to activate the resources you need to get into the flow state. Then, those are the two basic concepts. Then people started looking very recently, and it's interesting to measure what is happening in our brains and bodies when we're in this flow state. And something that is a very interesting hypothesis that's been proven, only partly so far, because it's a complicated neuroscience research, is that if you look at our normal brain, this was what makes us human, where we reflect on ourselves, the prefrontal cortex. We plan, we strategize, and we form our identity. This is actually shut down or down-regulated, some part of it, during the flow state. So the experience that has been described by so many people of, the loss of self-consciousness and the distortion of time can actually be derived from the fact that our brain has a reduced activity in certain areas. This concept is called transient hyperfrontality, because it's temporarily down-regulated areas of the brain, and this leads to this feeling of sometimes even oneness with all human beings and the situation. If you look at the neurochemistry of flow, it's just as interesting, because during this flow state, there's a wide mixture of neurotransmitters released that you can find in different types of, for example, drugs, and this is why microdosing is also a big topic in the flow state and biohacking area. You have, for example, the dopamine, which is the motivation neurotransmitter, and it just makes it feel rewarding. You have adrenaline, so this is the activation part that gives you energy and tenses the muscles. You have serotonin, which is gives you a feeling of calm and contentment and makes you less reactive. You have endorphins, that gives you this feeling of euphoria during the flow state. Now you also have anandamides, which is basically the opposite of adrenaline. It slows you down, so all these things happen at the same time. This is why you're feeling attentive, focused, and relaxed all at the same time. And you also release more oxytocin, which the drug would be the hug, right? So this happens all at the same time, and this gives us this feeling, complex feeling of flow state. If you look at it from a physiological perspective, it's also very interesting what's happening here. Many of you might know that we have two systems in our autonomous nervous system. One is there to help us survive, and the other one is to rest, digest, and grow. And in this fight or flight mode, we feel very much under stress, so we have a racing heart, muscle tension, but cognitively we're very limited. We feel unease, inflexible, and we have this sort of creative block. All we can do is fight or flee from our threat. Then on the other side, we have the parasympathetic branch of the nervous system, which is the opposite. It helps us calm down, grow, and reestablish homeostasis in the body. And there we have a more open awareness, curiosity, and freedom. And what's been measured now, through, for example, different measurement parameters, such as heart rate variability or skin conductance in different types of ways, that are indicators for the activation of the autonomic nervous system, that flow is directly correlated with a moderate and simultaneous activation of both branches. So if you're in between stress and relaxation, the two modes that I just shown, when people report being in flow on a subjective basis, they're most of the time in a balanced mode of physiological activation. So that's the scientific background of how that happens when flow is induced in your body. Now, for us, the most interesting question, and also one of the questions I tried to answer in my research at the Institute for Applied Game Science, is why are there some players that get flow more often than others? It's just unfair. Or in everyday work life, why do some people find more flow than others? And they found out that it does have to do with the very basic concept of the flow channel, just with a slight twist. So if you look at very mechanistically, in any work environment, I can try to adjust the challenge to the skill level of a certain worker. But that just sets up the precondition for flow. You still need to have a mindset and skills that are related to personality that help you perceive this challenge and help you perceive this skill as being compatible with what you're actually doing right now. So it's all about the subjective experience. Another way to explain it is if you look at flow stoppers. Like, why can we not find flow state doing work? Well, we could always blame the external distractions, such as there's so much workload, people distracting me, I have time pressure, so I just can't handle the situation. But like I told you, it's actually necessary for us to feel stressed, to feel activated in order to experience any type of real flow state. So we need that. Those are just opportunities. Those are just opportunities for flow states, and the question is, are we ready to tap into flow? And sometimes we are not, because there are many flow stoppers. I just don't feel like it, I'm not motivated, maybe I'm too anxious in a social situation. The anxiety then, if you look at the physiological area, makes me more stressed out, so I cannot find this physiological balance. Maybe I doubt myself, I don't have clear goals and a lack of purpose, so there are many personality-related psychological flow stoppers that when opportunities arise, because there's a stressful, challenging situation, we're not able to tap into flow. So you could look at it from a perspective of stress. The transactional stress model of Lazarus is an old model that can be applied to the flow state. So in any given situation that is demanding, you can come into the situation with a different type of mindset. And this mindset determines whether you appraise a certain situation as a threat or as your challenge that you want to take on. And if you feel, this is the skill part, that you do have the resources, you perceive your resources to be sufficient to deal with the situation, well then what happens is that you take on that challenge and tap into the flow state. And if you feel like the actual challenge, the demanding situation exceeds your resources, you are going to feel stressed out. So what I'm trying to show here with this graph is it's all up to us. It's all related to our personality, mindsets, and coping skills, whether or not we can find flow in everyday life. So I've done this research on, like I said, the personality-related skills and mindset that help find flow. And there's this concept of this autotelic personality. I showed you in the beginning that one of the subjective experience of flow state is that I just like what I'm doing. Autotelic. It's come from Greek, from the Greek language. Auto is the goal, telic self, so the activity is the goal in itself. And there are certain characteristics of an autotelic person that can be trained or schooled in some sort of way, cultivated, such as focus. And for focus, in order to find this flow state, you need to be focused in a relaxed way for a sustained sustained period of time. And this has to do with mindfulness as a skill and concentration. Then there's, okay, it's Leichtigkeit, because with Flowletics we have the flow model, the acronym FLOW, and okay, Leichtigkeit is the German word for ease, which is the skill to emotionally regulate yourself in challenging situations. So they show that people that are more emotionally intelligent experience more flow state. Also, people that are great at emotion regulation do so too. Then the optimism. This is a mindset issue. So how do I approach a certain situation? Do I appraise a situation as a threat or a challenge? And there are concepts measured such as the actual self-efficacy of people, the confidence, then an internal locus of control. So do I think that everything that happens to me is a result of my action, or am I just in the passive role and things happen to me? This type of mindset and belief has been shown in research, just a slight shift to determine whether you can find flow states when opportunities arise or not. And lastly, Wachstumsmindset, W, so the growth mindset, which you might probably have heard of. Also, something similar, such as hardiness and your achievement motive, which is that you act out of a hope for success instead of a fear of failure. So all these small little mindset shifts, they can help you find more flow in everyday life. And this is what we're trying to do with Flowletics. With Flowletics, we want to build a digital flow coach that you can put in your pocket. So if you look at the flow personality, what we do is, at the beginning, if you open Flowletics, then there's a digital coach that asks a number of questions to find out how much flow you are experiencing right now, and then what your specific flow stoppers are that prevent you from finding more flow. And then each of you receives an individual flow profile in these 4 areas. And based on this, then the coach tailors a training program to your specific psychophysiological needs by mixing exercises from different types of mental training and positive neuroplasticity training methods. All you need to do is train 10 minutes a day and actually do the neuroplasticity training. And then you can give the app your subjective feedback on your current emotional state and stress level, so that we always know where within the flow challenge you are located right now, and we can track your progress and adjust your training level accordingly. So you train, you improve, we show you the progress. What I just showed you is our product vision. What we've done so far, and you can have a look at it, is we just launched our Flow Challenge, which is a Facebook Messenger bot-based coaching interaction where you can try our flow training in a 7-day period for free. So if you want, you can just go to our Facebook page, write us a message, and you will directly enter into the Flow Challenge. Yeah, that's all I wanted to show you. If there are any questions right now, I'm open to answer them. Thank you very much.